At the Sunday family dinner, my son looked straight at me and said, "You're nothing but a freeloader." For a moment, I thought I had misunderstood him. I was sitting at the head of my own dining table, inside the house I had paid for with my late husband, while my 36-year-old son lived there without paying a cent. His wife and child lived there too. I covered the electricity, water, internet, groceries, insurance, and nearly every expense they conveniently forgot to mention. Yet somehow I was the freeloader. I placed my fork beside my plate and looked directly into his eyes. "You have 24 hours to leave." The words landed heavily. My daughter-in-law, Marissa, froze with her glass halfway to her lips. The confident smile she usually wore around me disappeared. Beside her, my 9-year-old grandson, Oliver, lowered his eyes toward his dinner. Seeing his sadness hurt more than my son's insult, but it also reminded me why I could not surrender again. 2 years earlier, when my son, Daniel, lost his apartment after a series of reckless financial decisions, I had opened my door immediately. I was 66, widowed and living alone in a quiet suburban home. I believed family helped family. I never imagined kindness would become an invitation for disrespect. At first, Daniel promised the arrangement would be temporary. He said he only needed a few months to recover. Marissa thanked me constantly. They helped with chores and treated my home with care. Then the gratitude faded. Daniel began leaving dirty dishes everywhere. Marissa criticized the food I bought and demanded expensive organic brands. They took over the living room, invited guests without asking, and acted irritated whenever I wanted to use my own kitchen. Slowly, I became invisible. I was no longer Daniel's mother. I was the woman who stocked the refrigerator, paid the bills, watched Oliver, and stayed out of the way. That evening, Daniel leaned back in his chair and laughed nervously. "Mom, don't be dramatic. I only meant you should help more with Oliver instead of spending all day in the garden. Marissa and I actually work." I stood and collected my plate. 24 hours, I repeated. "Are you serious?" Marissa asked. "Completely." Daniel shook his head. "You'll calm down by morning." I walked to the kitchen sink. "No, tomorrow evening I expect your belongings to be gone." They believed I was having an emotional outburst. They assumed I would feel guilty, apologize, and pretend nothing had happened. They had forgotten something important. I had spent my entire life taking care of other people. I knew exactly how much strength it took to stop. The following morning, the smell of coffee filled the kitchen. Daniel and Marissa came downstairs laughing as if the previous night had never occurred. Marissa opened the refrigerator. "Are you going shopping today?" she asked. "We need oat milk and I want fresh salmon tonight." I sat quietly at the breakfast table, holding my tablet. "No," she stared at me. "No," she repeated. "You heard me. I don't have time to shop." "Then you should order food." Daniel frowned. "Mom, what is this?" I locked my tablet and stood. "You have 20 hours left. Packing would be a better use of your time." Neither of them understood that while they slept, I had already made decisions. I had canceled the credit card Daniel used for personal expenses. I had removed him from my vehicle insurance. I had ended the premium subscriptions they watched every night. I had not shouted. I had simply closed every door they had mistaken for an entitlement. Daniel grabbed his briefcase and walked toward the entrance. Then he reached for the keys to my SUV. The hook was empty. "Where are the keys?" he demanded. "In my pocket." "I'm late. You can take the bus." His face turned red. "That's my ride." "No," I replied. "It is my vehicle." He stepped closer. "I'm your son, and you are an adult who has spent 2 years living at my expense." Marissa crossed her arms. "This is ridiculous. Give him the keys." I walked past her and entered my study. Before closing the door, I looked back. 18 hours. For the first time, Daniel's expression changed. He was beginning to understand that I was not asking them to leave. I was taking my home back. The front door slammed so hard that the windows rattled. From inside my study, I heard Daniel muttering as he walked toward the corner bus stop. Marissa remained in the kitchen, opening cabinets and closing them with unnecessary force. I returned to my desk and continued reading. For 2 years, I had allowed their moods to control the atmosphere of my home. If Daniel was frustrated, everyone became quiet. If Marissa was annoyed, I changed my plans to avoid an argument. I had confused keeping the peace with surrendering my peace. That morning, I finally understood the difference. At noon, Marissa returned from a fitness class with 2 women following behind her. Their laughter filled the hallway. She had done this many times before. She invited people without asking, occupied the living room, and expected me to disappear into my bedroom. But that day, I stayed exactly where I was. A few minutes later, her voice echoed through the house. "Clara," I opened my study door. Marissa stood in front of the pantry with both doors wide open. The shelves were empty. "Where is everything?" she demanded. "The food I purchased is stored elsewhere." "What do you mean?" "I mean it belongs to me." Her friend stood awkwardly near the sofa. "I plan to make a snack board," Marissa said. "There's no cheese, fruit, or anything. You and Daniel both earn salaries," I answered. "If you want to entertain guests, you can buy your own food." Her face hardened. "You hid groceries from us?" "I protected groceries from people who insulted me while eating them." The room became silent. One of her friends picked up her handbag. "I just remembered I have an appointment," she said. The other quickly agreed. Within a minute, both women had left. Marissa stared at the closed front door. "You embarrassed me. You embarrassed yourself. You're selfish." "No," I replied. "I am finished being used." She grabbed her phone. "You're going to regret this when Daniel gets home. You have 15 hours. I suggest finding moving boxes." She stormed upstairs. At 2:00, my phone rang Daniel. I let it ring before answering. "What did you do to my card?" he shouted. I heard restaurant noise behind him. I canceled it. "You can't do that." "I'm having lunch with clients. The bill is nearly $200. And the card was declined. It is my card. You made me look stupid. That was not my responsibility. I don't have enough cash. Then solve the problem." "Mom," I ended the call. For years, Daniel had expected me to rescue him from every consequence. Whenever he made a mistake, he called me. Whenever money disappeared, I covered the shortage. Whenever his choices created trouble, I repaired the damage. He had never learned responsibility because I had always softened the landing. That ended now. I went to the garage and pulled out the cardboard boxes I had saved from deliveries. During the previous months, I had flattened them and stacked them beside an old cabinet. I carried them upstairs one at a time. Then I placed 20 empty boxes outside Daniel and Marissa's bedroom. I did not pack for them. I did not touch their belongings. I simply gave them what they needed to leave. By 6 that evening, the front door opened. Daniel and Marissa entered together. Their faces looked exhausted. Then they saw the boxes. Neither laughed. Neither made a sarcastic remark. They found me sitting at the dining table, reading a novel. Daniel walked toward me and placed both hands on the table. "Enough," he said. "You've punished us. You canceled the card, took away the food, and humiliated Marissa. Now remove those boxes." I closed my book. "This is my house too," he continued. "I'm your son. I grew up here." I opened a folder beside me and removed one document, then I slid it across the table. "Read it." Daniel looked down. Marissa leaned over his shoulder. It was the property deed. I pointed to the ownership line. "Clara Bennett, sole owner." Daniel swallowed. "You didn't grow up here," I said. "Your father and I bought this house 12 years ago, when you already had your own apartment. But I'm family. Family does not mean unlimited access to my money, home, and patience." His voice became quieter. "You can't throw us outside. I gave you 24 hours. Marissa suddenly smiled. It was not a kind smile. "You're forgetting someone," she said. I knew exactly what she meant. They were about to use Oliver against me, and they believed my love for my grandson would force me to surrender. But they had misunderstood my love. I would always protect Oliver. That did not mean I would protect his parents from the consequences of their choices. Marissa folded her arms and looked at me with a sudden confidence. "You're forgetting someone," she said. Daniel remained beside the table, watching me carefully. They both knew where my weakness was. Oliver, my grandson, had been the brightest part of my life since the day he was born. I had held him through fevers, attended his school performances, helped him learn to ride a bicycle, and listened patiently whenever he wanted to explain a new game. They believed I would accept any amount of disrespect to keep him close. They were wrong. A few seconds later, small footsteps sounded on the stairs. Oliver appeared in the hallway wearing blue pajamas and holding his stuffed fox against his chest. His eyes moved from his parents to me. "Why are you fighting?" he asked. Marissa immediately turned toward him. "Your grandmother wants us to leave," she said. "She doesn't care where we go." "Marissa," I said sharply. She stopped. I walked toward Oliver and knelt until we were at the same height. "Look at me, sweetheart." He tightened his arms around the fox. "This house will always be a safe place for you," I told him. "Your room is still your room. You can visit whenever you want, and I will always be your grandmother. Even if Mom and Dad leave, especially then." His expression softened. "But why do they have to go?" "Sometimes adults forget that homes need rules," I explained. "Your parents need their own place and their own responsibilities." "Did I do something wrong?" "No," I answered immediately. "You did nothing wrong." I brushed his hair away from his forehead. "This is not because of you." Oliver stepped forward and wrapped his arms around my neck. I hugged him tightly. Behind us, the room was silent. Daniel and Marissa had expected tears, guilt, and panic. Instead, I had spoken honestly without placing their problems on a child. When Oliver pulled away, I held his hand and walked with him toward the kitchen. 9 hours, I announced. That night, the house changed. The upstairs hallway filled with the sound of drawers opening, tape tearing, and boxes scraping across the floor. Daniel and Marissa argued behind their bedroom door. At first, Daniel insisted that I would change my mind. "She'll never actually lock us out," he said. Marissa disagreed. "She canceled your card and took the car. She's serious." I sat downstairs with a cup of tea. For the first time in years, I did not feel responsible for fixing the tension around me. Their panic belonged to them. At 7 in the morning, I prepared breakfast for myself and Oliver. Daniel came downstairs wearing yesterday's clothes. "We need more time," he said. "You had a full day." "We haven't found an apartment. That is unfortunate." "You expect us to take Oliver to a hotel?" "I expect you to make responsible arrangements for your family." He stared at me. "You really don't care." I placed my cup on the table. "I care enough to stop enabling you." He laughed bitterly. "Everything is about money to you." "No, this is about respect." Marissa entered carrying several bags. "We booked a hotel for 3 nights, she said. "After that, we don't know." "You both have jobs," I replied. "You can find a rental." She looked around the kitchen. "You're enjoying this." "No." That answer surprised her. "I am not enjoying your struggle," I continued. "I am relieved that I no longer have to sacrifice myself to prevent it." At exactly 8 o'clock, the doorbell rang. Daniel looked toward the entrance. "Who is that?" I stood. "You'll see." When I opened the door, a locksmith stood outside with a toolbox. "Good morning, Mrs. Bennett," he said. "I'm here to replace the locks." "Come in." Daniel dropped the suitcase he had been carrying. "What are you doing?" "The locks will be changed by 10. "We're still packing." "Then continue." Marissa's rushed downstairs. "You called a locksmith?" "Yes, you're unbelievable." I was clear about the deadline. The locksmith removed his tools. The sound of the electric drill filled the hallway. Daniel stared at the damaged old lock as if watching his final hope disappear. "You can't do this to us," he said. "I already have. You're destroying our family." I looked at him calmly. "No, I am ending a situation that was destroying me." For 2 hours, they packed without stopping. When the boxes ran out, they used large black bags. Oliver sat beside me on the sofa, quietly drawing pictures. I made him hot chocolate. Every few minutes, Daniel looked toward me, waiting for guilt to appear. It never did. By 10 o'clock, the rental car was full. Only one thing remained. The final goodbye, and Daniel still believed one last accusation could make me change my mind. By 10 o'clock, the rental car was packed almost to the roof. Suitcases filled the trunk. Black bags were wedged behind the front seats. Several cardboard boxes sat on the back floor, their labels written in hurried, uneven letters. Daniel carried the final suitcase through the hallway, then he stopped beside me. "I hope you're happy," he said. His voice was cold. But beneath the anger, I heard something else. Fear. For the first time in years, he had nowhere to hide from the consequences of his decisions. I looked at him calmly. "I'm not happy that it came to this." "Then stop us." "No." He stared at me. "You're choosing this house over your family. I am choosing dignity inside my own home. You're destroying everything." No, Daniel, I'm protecting what is left. Marissa walked toward the door while holding Oliver's backpack. Come on, she told him. Oliver turned toward me. Grandma, when can I come back? You can come on Saturday, I answered. We'll go to the park, and afterward we'll make pancakes. He smiled. Chocolate chip pancakes? Of course. I knelt and hugged him. Your room will stay exactly the way it is, I whispered. Nobody is taking it from you. He hugged me tightly. I love you. I love you more than all the stars. When I stood, Daniel was watching. For a brief moment, his anger weakened. Then he picked up Oliver's backpack. We need to go. They walked outside. I followed them to the porch. Daniel opened the car door for Oliver and turned back toward me. You'll regret this, he said. Maybe, I replied, but I would regret losing myself even more. Marissa shook her head. You could have handled this differently. So could you. Her expression hardened. You treated us like strangers. You treated me like a servant. She had no answer. The locksmith stepped toward the front door. Daniel looked at the new lock. You really changed everything. Yes. The car engine started. Oliver pressed his hand against the window. I raised mine in return. Then the vehicle moved down the street. I watched until it disappeared. There were no tears, no dramatic apology. No final promise that everything would return to normal. The front door closed. A second later, the new lock clicked. The sound was quiet. But to me, it sounded like freedom. I stood in the hallway for several minutes. The house felt unfamiliar. It was peaceful. No television blared from the living room. No one complained about dinner. No one demanded that I buy groceries or change my plans. The silence was not lonely. It was mine. I walked through every room. The kitchen counters were clean. The hallway was empty. The living room belonged to me again. I opened the curtains and allowed sunlight to fill the house. Then I made coffee. For 2 years, I had lived as though my own comfort mattered less than everyone else's. I had rearranged my schedule, spent my savings, and ignored insults because I feared being called selfish. But peace had a price. Sometimes, that price was disappointing people who benefited from your lack of boundaries. During the following week, Daniel did not call. He believed silence would punish me. At first, I missed Oliver terribly. Then I reminded myself that loving my grandson did not require surrendering to his parents. I spent the week doing things I had postponed for years. I hired a landscaping company to handle the heavy work in the garden. I enrolled in a watercolor class at the community center. I replaced the worn curtains in my bedroom. I also reviewed my finances. Without supporting 2 adults, I was saving nearly $1,500 every month. For the first time, retirement no longer felt frightening. It felt possible. One Saturday morning, my phone rang. Daniel, I answered. Hello. Oliver wants to come over. Bring him. There was a pause. That's all? Yes. You're not going to apologize? No. You're not going to ask where we're staying? You can tell me if you want. He sounded irritated. We found a small apartment. Good. We're managing. I'm glad. Another silence followed. Then he said, We'll be there at 10. When the call ended, I smiled. I prepared Oliver's favorite snacks and placed fresh sheets on his bed. At 10, Daniel parked outside. He walked to the porch with Oliver. His greeting was stiff. Morning. Good morning. Oliver ran inside. Grandma. I opened my arms. For the rest of the day, we played board games, visited the park, and made chocolate chip pancakes. Daniel returned in the evening. He remained outside while Oliver hugged me goodbye. Before leaving, my son looked toward the house. You seem different, he said. I am. How? I finally learned that love with boundaries becomes permission. He said nothing. Then he nodded once and walked away. That night, I locked the door. The new key turned smoothly. I went to bed knowing my peace no longer depended on anyone's approval. But one final change was still waiting, and it would reveal whether Daniel had truly learned anything from losing the home he had taken for granted. A month passed after Daniel, Marissa, and Oliver left my house. The change was immediate. The hallways no longer carried the tension of people avoiding one another. I could cook whenever I wanted, sit in the living room without being pushed aside, and spend an afternoon in the garden without hearing complaints that I was wasting time. Most importantly, I stopped feeling like a guest inside my own home. My watercolor class became the highlight of every Thursday. I met people starting new chapters after retirement, divorce, loss, or years spent caring for others. One afternoon, our instructor asked us to paint a doorway. I chose the front door of my house. I painted it open, with warm light behind it. Then I painted a small silver key beside the threshold. The picture reminded me that boundaries were not walls built to punish people. They were doors I had the right to open or close. Daniel continued bringing Oliver every weekend. At first, our conversations were short. Morning. I'll return at 6, fine. But slowly, something changed. One Saturday, Daniel remained on the porch after Oliver ran inside. "Can we talk?" he asked. I nodded. We sat on the wooden bench near the front door. For several seconds, he stared at the garden. "Things are harder than I expected," he admitted. "I know. The apartment is small. The bills add up quickly. That is what independence feels like." He gave a tired laugh. "I guess I never understood how much you paid for us. You did not want to understand." He looked down. "That's fair." I waited, then he continued. "I was angry because I felt embarrassed. I lost money, sold my car, and couldn't keep the apartment. Living here made me feel like a failure. You could have told me that. Instead, I blamed you. Yes. I called you a freeloader because I hated needing you." The honesty surprised me. I did not excuse him, but I listened. "I was wrong," he said. "I treated your help like it was owed to me." "You did. I'm sorry, Mom." For a moment, neither of us spoke. An apology did not erase 2 years. It did not repay the money or remove every hurtful memory, but it was a beginning. "I accept your apology," I said. "Trust will take time. I understand." Respect is not something you promise once, it is something you practice. He nodded. After that day, Daniel changed in small ways. He began arriving on time. He brought Oliver's school supplies without expecting me to buy them. Sometimes he asked before entering instead of walking through the door as though he owned the place. Marissa remained distant, but she stopped making demands. That was enough for now. My relationship with Oliver became stronger. When he visited, we painted, baked, read stories, and explored the park. He never heard me insult his parents. I refused to make him choose between the people he loved. One evening, he looked around the living room. "Grandma, are you lonely?" I thought carefully. "Sometimes," I said, "but being peaceful is different from being lonely." "What's peaceful?" "It means your heart is not always afraid of the next argument." He considered that. "Are you peaceful now?" "Yes." He smiled. "Me too." That answer meant more than he knew. Months later, Daniel called with unexpected news. He had paid off one of his debts. "I'm trying to fix everything," he said. "Keep going." "I will." He paused. "Thank you for not giving up on me." "I did not give up on you," I replied. "I stopped carrying you. There was a difference. I had learned that love was not endless sacrifice. A mother could care deeply and still say no. She could protect her family without allowing them to destroy her peace. The day I gave Daniel 24 hours to leave was not the day I lost my family. It was the day we stopped pretending. They faced responsibilities they had avoided. I reclaimed the dignity I had abandoned. Oliver learned that adults could set rules without withdrawing love. Every night, I locked my front door with my silver key. I no longer felt guilty. I felt safe. And whenever I looked at the watercolor painting above my desk, I remembered the lesson hidden inside it. A home should be a place where love lives. But love cannot survive where respect is treated as optional. I had not destroyed my family. I had changed the rules that were hurting us. For the first time in years, those rules allowed all of us to breathe. The next spring, Daniel arrived early with Oliver. He carried a small potted rose and stood quietly on the porch. "This is for your garden," he said. I accepted it. "Thank you." He looked toward the house. "Can we come inside?" I stepped aside. "Yes, you can." But this time, the invitation was not assumed. It was given, and that made all the difference. As Oliver ran toward the kitchen, Daniel followed more slowly. He paused beside the watercolor above my desk. "You painted that?" "Yes." "It looks peaceful." "It is." He smiled faintly. For the first time in years, I believed our family might become healthier. Not because I had sacrificed everything, but because I had finally taught them that love and respect had to live together. I picked up the silver key from the table and placed it in my pocket. My home was still open, but now, so were my eyes.